Hello, and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live show on the channel. Loads and loads of news has come out, loads of insiders breaking down the takeover, exposing Qatar, exposing the media for the lies, but shocking details have been revealed about Qatar's actual bid, which reveals that potentially Qatar never really wanted United, but were using it to sort of hype up their country's profile in that sort of sense, and using United as PR, and that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was the only bidder. Sir Jim Ratcliffe had conversations with those around Manchester United that have revealed that he very much hinted that the full sale is in INEOS's plan and he's not going to wait around for the full sale, among more on Ratcliffe's reported plans. And of course, we will be talking about the transfer news. Manchester United heating up to bring a striker in on loan by the end of the window, and Goncalo Ramos is a name that might be available, and that could take Man United into a very good place, because Ramos and Højlund as striker options, I know he's not been the best at PSG, but wowie. So please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. Share the video. Got lots of information to get into, but I think it's only right that we start, with the sort of takeover news and some of the information coming out on the takeover and more. Do get involved in the chat. Do let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is Glazer PR? Do you think that this can't be Glazer PR because of stock market manipulation and rules, and that, oh, Chris clicked on Ben Jacobs there, and that actually Qatar were just using Man United as PR? Let me know your thoughts down below. But Ben Jacobs said this, and I think this is really interesting, and I think this is also quite worrying, but I also think this reveals a lot when you actually look at the takeover, how it went down, the news, the information, because there was information coming out before we knew it was going to be Sir Jim in sort of April, May time, saying that actually those within the Glazer family are doubting how authentic Qatar's bid is, and they didn't know if Qatar were genuine or this or that because they couldn't provide the financial statements. And if you go back to my videos from April, I was discussing that, and everyone was saying, that's just a load of BS, just ignore those reports. But it doesn't look like those reports were a load of BS when all the information's coming out, essentially saying that what the media have told us about Qatar could essentially be lies. So let's dive into this information here. Ben Jacobs said this, and I hope the quality is okay, so do let me know down below if there's any issues with the quality of the stream, and I will try and sort that out. Ben Jacobs said a fascinating and juicy detail revealed on the Man United sale process. A bidder, A, who was Sheikh Yassim, formally withdrew on October 15th, and Qatar bid consistently failed to provide customary financing commitment letters throughout, and there is no mention of pledged investment. Several sources close to the sales say it repeatedly that the reality of Qatar's offer did not match the PR. SEC filings also suggest the board made it equal per share consideration for A and B shares was necessary, and Qatar failed to do this. It was said representatives of Manchester United continued to inform Qatar that the board of directors was not prepared to move forward with the transaction whereby the holders of Class A shares received less per share than the holders of Class B shares, and that the board of directors would require sufficient evidence of financing and customary financing papers. Basically saying, in other words, they couldn't move forward with the Qatar bid because they weren't showing proof of finance, proof of how they were going to pay this. They were really reluctant to give over sort of financing and paying off the certain shares. And that it also confirmed that Ratcliffe pivoted to his current structure in July 2023. And we're going to get more details on that. But it's essentially coming out and basically saying that Qatar gave all of this talk in the media, this and that, but Qatar weren't willing to bid over a certain amount, and Qatar weren't willing to sort of show proof of where the money is coming from, which is probably having the Glazers worried, and they weren't committing to a lot of financial papers and more. And for me, you have to look at this at two ways. You have to look at this at one way and say, well, at the end of the day, the fans are upset that, the full sale isn't what we're getting at the moment. We all sat here saying, we want the full sale, we want the full sale. And I think because we didn't get a full sale and Jim Ratcliffe's 25% has enabled the Glazers to stay, there is that frustration towards the Ratcliffe deal, even though it looks like Ratcliffe is coming in with good intentions. He wants to, invest in the club. He wants to do the stadium. He wants to do facilities. He's bringing in Paul Mitchell. He's bringing in Dan Ashworth. It looks like he's trying to do all the right things, and hopefully that does actually happen, and that's just not newspaper talk, and that we do get Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell, new stadium and that in place. There's obviously a lot of frustration within the fan base that, well, when's the full sale happening? Ratcliffe's only buying 25%. There's that frustration. Well, will Ratcliffe be able to do what he wants to do? Will the Glazers be holding him back? And potentially, that can go on to the Glazers, and there's a feeling among some people that this could just be Glazer PR because they know that some people are frustrated that it's not a full sale. But I don't think this is Glazer PR, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's quite easy to say that this is Glazer PR, and that I think the reason I don't think it's Glazer PR is because I did get info, and there was info around the period of March, April, where it said there was worrying suggestions that Qatar's bid wasn't serious and that they weren't showing proof of finance or all of that as well. So it's interesting as well. I'm sure it was dodgy where the money was coming from. It was surely a front up for a state-backed bid, 100%. I think what it was is there was something dodgy about Qatar's bid. I think, I think there was something dodgy about it. There was something about it that just wasn't adding up, I think, is what this sort of means. And that a lot of this talk in the media could be PR, because a lot of this talk about the Qatar bid in the media was saying the pledged investment. And I think when a lot of the media reports on Qatar was just talking about the pledged investment, this new stadium, no debt, it kept coming out with no debt, zero debt, debt removed, massive bid, pledged investment, new stadium. And I think the Qatar news sometimes was selling the dream to fans to the point where when you look back at a lot of the information on Qatar, a lot of it felt like PR when they were going on about everything they were going to do, but there wasn't any progress going on. They weren't putting any bids in because, let's be honest, Qatar could have beat Ratcliffe. I know that there's the feeling that actually the Glazers never wanted to sell, going with Ratcliffe and staying at the club. But and maybe that was the case. Maybe that's why Qatar lost. But I do think, and although Qatar would have to pay ridiculous money, and I understand why Qatar wouldn't go and pay 7 billion for United, because we're not worth 7 billion quid, I do think Qatar had the financial capability, from what we believe, to go all out for United in a state-backed bid. But I guess there's worrying complications because it can't be completely state-backed because of the situation with PSG. Man United had to prove that it was separate. But it does feel a little bit like the Qatar bid coming out is looking more and more like PR when we're hearing all of this, that, they're going to clear the debt, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, but then they're not actually submitting the papers needed for their bid. It was basically said, in other words, that Qatar failed to provide proof of funding and their final offer was legally unacceptable. It was said that Sergeant Ratcliffe worked through different avenues to reach a way that worked, and in the end, seemingly the only way. Nobody could force the Glazers to sell at a lower valuation, simple as. So the information sort of coming out is more that basically Qatar didn't want to pay over a certain amount for Man United, and to be fair to them, the Glazers were being ridiculously greedy. United is not worth 6 billion quid. The Glazers were being ridiculously greedy. To be fair to Qatar, they didn't want to overpay. But basically, the Glazers weren't going to lower the price. Qatar weren't going to up the price. Qatar's bid was legally unacceptable. They didn't find the proof of funding, and that sort of forced the Glazers to go with Jim Ratcliffe. An interesting point that was mentioned by the United Muppeteers said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe was fed up with delays as well. After the terms of the deal had been effectively agreed for months, he gave the Glazers and board a Christmas deadline to accept, or he would withdraw from the process. So it seems like the Glazers might have been holding out for Qatar, but Ratcliffe said, well, if you don't, I'm withdrawing in December. It seems like the Glazers were holding out for Qatar. Qatar weren't coming in with maybe the proof of funding, the offer that they wanted, and they thought Qatar would because of the amount of talk Qatar gave to the media, and that potentially they went with Ratcliffe because of that. Is, I think, what a lot of the info coming out is sort of suggesting. I'll show you what the United Muppeteers reported. And now United Muppeteers do have a sort of Sir Jim Ratcliffe agenda, and they've been quite biased towards Ratcliffe in their reporting, but they've also been very accurate with the information they've released through the takeover. And in terms of accuracy, they have been very accurate, and their information is often checked out 9 times out of 10 is correct. And they basically said that Qatar failed to provide proof of funding and their final offer was legally unacceptable. So Jim worked through different avenues to reach that way that worked, and in the end it's seemingly the only way. Nobody could force the Glazers to sell at lower valuation. So essentially Qatar weren't going to provide proof of funding for the deal, and a lot of people believed that this Qatar takeover deal was just this big PR spin, that they were using the media to sort of get people hyped up about PR, about Qatar, all of this, but maybe they were using United's name to propel themselves, which I do think is very interesting news and developments coming out as well. Unless they are under NDA, I'd wait to see what the Qataris have to say about this. Glazers are last firm and enough to be trusting. I agree. I think a lot of the information that comes out, especially around the takeover, you can't trust. But I do think they have to get certain people in place to check the authenticities of deals so there's not stock market manipulation going on. And the one thing I will say is Glazer PR is massive. Glazer PR is massive. I think the fact that, it's not a full sale, there's frustration. Glazer PR is massive, but I also do look at the situation and I do go with the news. So the SEC's main job is to prevent market manipulation. They would have to check this, and I don't know if it will be Glazer spin with this kind of information when we know that this will be thoroughly checked by those around the stock market, because they don't want to get in trouble. So it'll be interesting to see, because you don't know what to believe with Man United news coming out. And I think a lot of news that comes out, particularly around the takeover, that will be bigging up Jim Ratcliffe and putting down Qatar, can easily be Glazer PR. But I don't think this is. I think this is probably the genuine truth, because when you look back at it, you look back at the information, you look back at the facts. A lot of the Qatar bids kept mentioning full sale and all their plans of what they want to do with the club. But there were reports dating back from March, February, April about what people worrying about how serious the Qatar bid was. Yes, obviously there was a slight agenda against Qatar, I think, in the media reporting, and it was very obvious that mainstream media was sort of hyping up Ratcliffe when they were reporting on the takeover, in the sense of they were bigging up Ratcliffe and slamming Qatar in their ways, 100%. But I do think there was a lot of information that went out back in the day saying, suggesting that those believed that the delays were actually because of, they think that Qatar weren't providing proof of funds. And I think we did a video on something the Swedish Ramble had said something about the delays, some information about the delays being because of the Qatar hadn't submitted the papers or the proof of funding needed to progress with the takeover. So there was a lot of interesting information coming out as well. Alex does make an interesting point here. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS is well rich enough at his age to buy the whole club. Is he going to wait until he's 80? Yeah, that's the interesting point that I want to dive into, because there is some news coming out that Jim Ratcliffe has hinted at a full sale happening between Manchester United and INEOS. I think the most disappointing thing with this takeover is that we're not getting the full sale we wanted. The Glazers are still here, and we believed that Qatar were going to be our way out of the Glazers. And in fact, Qatar, it looks like, has lied to us and used us as PR for their own game, and we're still here with the Glazers. Now, I will say this, I think Ratcliffe so far, actions speak louder than words. And while I wasn't the biggest fan of Ratcliffe coming in because I wanted the full sale and I'd made that clear, I think what Ratcliffe has done so far has been impressive, in the sense of Jim Ratcliffe has come in, he's visited United several times, he spoke to people, he spoke to the supporters trust, he's trying to get to know the players, the staff, communication with people, the fans, meeting the supporters committee, making his face shown. He's done more than the Glazers in a few days. Ratcliffe's made it clear he's not using United to make money out of the club, which I think is the case, because if he wants money, he can just use INEOS because they're 10 times richer than Manchester United, and that he wants to bring us back to the top performance and sporting wise. And I think to an extent, well, he does bring in Paul Mitchell, he does bring in Ashworth, and he does implement the structure, and he does go and build this new training ground and this new facilities like he said he's going to do, then I think, Sir Jim Ratcliffe has earned some trust. I think it's right that some fans feel betrayed that we were going to get sort of full sale, and then Ratcliffe's done this deal with the Glazers and brought 25% of the club. But if Ratcliffe does, if actions do speak louder than words, and Ratcliffe does do what's being reported on, that is eventually buying out the Glazers, investing in the facilities, the stadium, investing his own money into the club, into the transfer window, bringing in the right people, completely changing how footballing operations work with the likes of Dan Ashworth coming in, then I think Ratcliffe will probably be owed some apologies by people. Of course, actions speak louder than words. But I do think the information coming out about Jim Ratcliffe and his plans, as someone that's been very clear that I wanted a full sale, has been quite positive. It looks like he genuinely has United's best interest at heart. And of course, we'll know if this is PR or not, because actions speak louder than words. But it does feel right now, as someone that hyped up Qatar, the whole sort of takeover process, and made it clear that I want Qatar and I want the full sale, and I still want the full sale. I think the fact that the Glazers are still here is not on, because even if Ratcliffe's intentions are good, how much is he going to be able to do in the transfer window if the Glazers are still ultimately controlling the finances? But it does feel like right now, and again, this could be PR. We don't know the whole information with the takeover. Everything has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But it does feel like right now, looking at this process, Ratcliffe is coming in, genuinely interested in promoting change, is going to invest his own money in the club, has spent time talking to people, which is something the Glazers have never done. And Qatar were using United's PR, which it almost felt like it was the other way. But of course, actions speak louder than words. We'll see what happens with United. But I'm trying to be really positive and stuff as well. Just scrolling through the chat as well, a lot of people talking about FFP. This whole FFP thing, it seems to apply to every club but Man United and Chelsea that can spend endless amounts of money. It's almost as if people should wait to form an opinion rather than whine and throw attention when they don't get full sale, says SM. And I think it's easy to be caught up in emotions. I think when I found out that Ratcliffe was coming in, it was that sort of hope of getting a full sale when then Ratcliffe was buying 25% and the Glazers were staying on all the unknowns, that I think it made me react in a negative way. I thought we've been played by the Glazers. I genuinely believe that we've been played by the Glazers. This whole takeover process was a front, and that they had played Qatar to ultimately get the 25% and the minority stake that they wanted from Ratcliffe. That's what I genuinely believed at the time, and that was the frustration. But it feels like now, actually, maybe the Glazers were looking for the full sale. I don't know that. Maybe the delays was because they were waiting for Qatar. And maybe Jim Ratcliffe got fed up of waiting, which is what's being suggested, and they went with Ratcliffe's offer because he threatened to pull out, because the Glazers couldn't go with Qatar's offer because, one, they weren't going to up it and reach the Glazers' price, but two, when in Qatar's offer, they failed to provide all the documents they needed to show where the money's coming from, who's buying the club. It was a bit dodgy, and the Glazers don't want to get in legal trouble. There's loads to go through. And the reason I don't think this story is PR from the Glazers, believe it or not, about Qatar's bid being a PR, is because those at the stock market, those lawyers, we know that there was 50, 60 lawyers hired. The whole Rain Group would be going through those documents all the time, looking. And if something doesn't add up, they've got to make sure that, because there's a lot of legal issues that come along with this takeover. And maybe the Glazers that this whole time were looking for a full sale. I feel like with the takeover, you'll just never know, because you just don't know who to believe. And there's a lot of misinformation that comes out as well. But it does almost feel like Qatar have just lied to us and used Manchester United to propel themselves. And this sort of hope of this full sale that we clung onto for a year, thinking, oh, they're finally going to leave. It's like, have we just been played? It's interesting as well. Has Man United published its annual report balance already as well? I think they have. I haven't looked at it in detail, but I can do a video on that if you want me to. I know that a few people were mentioning that the other day, sort of United's report and plans. We've been lied to for 18 years, Alice. I don't trust any of them. Ratcliffe is a businessman like the Glazers, said Gaz. And I feel like as United fans, we're in this sort of process where it's just so hard to trust anyone. And it was even said by those who met Ratcliffe that they generally believe Ratcliffe has good intentions. He's made it clear he's not interested in making money out of the club. He plans to invest his own money in the club, the facility, the stadium. He wants to bring in sort of Paul Mitchell, Dan Ashworth, change the footballing operations, and his priority is success on the pitch. And those within the club are saying that they generally believe Ratcliffe has good intentions, but they're also saying, those inside the club, that they worry that while Ratcliffe has these good intentions and said he wants to do this and said he wants to do that, they are saying they still also worry that Ratcliffe won't be able to do that because he doesn't have ultimate power of the club, and that the Glazers still have ultimate power as well. So it's, while Ratcliffe is coming across to have good intentions, those at United do worry, how will he be able to do everything he says he wants to do as well. So interesting information coming out. It was said by James Ducker that Man United paid the Rain Group almost 25 million to broker the strategic review, which is 25 million out of our transfer budget. For Richard Arnold stands to earn 1.56 million at the moment as well. And there's loads of people getting a big payout from Manchester United as well. But it looks like the Glazers have received 900 million from Ratcliffe in the sale, and then using Man United's money to buy more things instead of the 900 million they've got. If you want to recap, I'd probably just scroll back a little bit because I don't want to continuously repeat myself. But just to sum it up, really, essentially it's coming out saying that this Qatar bid was actually PR from Qatar and that they never actually provided the documents needed as well. FFP needs to apply to everyone. Worst offenders seem to get by. Even soon spend versus their revenue would be like spending 350 million plus in one window. Yeah, it feels like FFP doesn't apply to City and Chelsea at the moment. It's interesting to see as well. But the whole FFP thing seems to be affecting a lot of clubs, and we'll see that pan out. And hopefully, the rules will be abided by, and those who don't abide by the rules will be punished as well. Alice, we only want full sale. I agree. Well, I want to get into some information that suggests that United could be going into a full sale. So, interesting information that came out, and this was said by the Athletic. This was said by the chair of MUST. So MUST is the Manchester United Supporters Trust, and the Manchester United Supporters Trust went and met Jim Ratcliffe yesterday or the day before. They had a sit-down conversation with Jim Ratcliffe about Manchester United, sort of his plans, his intentions for Manchester United, and Jim Ratcliffe obviously spoke to these Manchester United fans, and this is the information that had come out by J.D. Deitch, the chair of MUST. He says, "I am no fan of the Glazers. They never gave us the opportunity to talk. These are." He said, "These people are saying the right things. They're saying that there's nothing off the table. Let's go then. I'm not going to wait till I'm 72 for the next chance." So apparently Ratcliffe said to MUST. So Ratcliffe met the Manchester United Supporters Trust. And apparently Ratcliffe has said to those at the Manchester United Supporters Trust, MUST, that the full sale was not off the table. Ratcliffe was hinting that the full sale was very much going to happen. Obviously, Ratcliffe's only got 25% for now, but there was long indications that the full sale was going to happen. Those at the United Supporters Trust said that they don't like the Glazers, but they feel that Ratcliffe's intentions is good. He had a big conversation with them, and there's suggestions of the full sale ongoing, which is interesting information. There's been loads and loads of sort of news going about and transfer news and takeover news going about as well. No one is a fan of the Glazers, but people need to stop lumping Sir Jim in with the Glazers, and I agree with that. I've always said this I don't like that Sir Jim is brought 25% and enabled the Glazers to stay. I don't like that. I don't like that he got into bed with the Glazers, but he's not a Glazer. He's not. Okay, I know there's the frustration we didn't get the full sale and we didn't get Qatar, but Ratcliffe isn't a Glazer. I don't know. He's a businessman, and every businessman's got a big question mark over their head. But he has more interest in Man United than the Glazers. He probably knows the offside rule for one. Ratcliffe has been to as many Man United games as the Glazers already. Ratcliffe has spoken to more people at Man United than the Glazers already. Ratcliffe is interested in the footballing side of things, bringing in Brailsford. If he brings in Dan Ashworth, if he brings in Paul Mitchell, but more importantly, if Ratcliffe invests his own money into the club, then you can't compare him to the Glazers, because obviously actions speak louder than words, and this could be this big PR thing. But what's being reported and said is that Ratcliffe's going to spend his money to buy United, to upgrade the facilities, to upgrade the stadium, to upgrade Carrington, and then going to bring in the right people to run the footballing side of the club, and not take money out of the club, because if he needs money, he can take it out of INEOS because they earn 10 times more of United. The Glazers have not invested any of their own pennies into United. They've not invested a single one of their pennies into United, and they've also taken money out. So I think it would be unfair to call Ratcliffe another Glazer if Ratcliffe is investing money in and not taking money out. Yeah. Can't fault Sir Jim Ratcliffe, but he understood he was dealing with the Glazers much more than the Qataris did. Yeah. And I think what Ratcliffe did, which was smarter, and Ratcliffe tried to buy Chelsea and he failed to buy Chelsea. It was said that Ratcliffe learned a lot from his failed approach to trying to buy Chelsea, that understanding the owners and having a good relationship with the owners will help you with your bid. And the reason Ratcliffe didn't get Chelsea is because he didn't suck up to the owners enough. Ratcliffe made it his effort because he was determined to get United to suck up with the owners, to compliment the owners and work with them and actually meet them in person, whereas Qatar sort of hid behind this mask and kept sending representatives out. And I think that threw doubt in the Rain Group's mind of, well, who is this Sheikh Yassim? Why aren't we meeting him? Why is it always representatives? Where Sir Jim Ratcliffe was having a lot of conversations and have a lot more communication. And I think Sir Jim Ratcliffe knew he was dealing with the Glazers, knew he might have to compromise a little bit because these are the greedy Glazers. And I think that's where he beat out Qatar a big point. And I think because he failed to buy Chelsea, he learned actually the importance of you want to have a good relationship with the person you're buying from, and you want to have good communication. And I think he learned that from Chelsea. And I think that gave him a bit of an advantage as well. Jim brought a pie when he visited Old Trafford. He's already put more money into the club than Glazers have ever. Yeah, and it still makes me mad. I'm going to get into it in a second, that we just keep hearing stories coming out like the Glazers did a trip to London, spent £1 million in a weekend and put it on the United expenses tabs, which could cover a loan fee. Do you know what I mean? And the Glazers have put all the financing costs for the lawyers and stuff for this whole takeover. Oh, we'll just take that money out of United. Something that was said actually was this by The Athletic. Manchester United paid £31.5 million to the Rain Group, the bank mandated by the Glazers for the sale process. All costs, including their expenses, will be paid by United and not by the Glazer family. So the Glazers borrowed 30 million from Manchester United to pay the Rain Group. I mean, every day there's information coming out about the Glazers doing this, the Glazers doing that, the Glazers doing this, the Glazers doing that. The Glazers paid £30 million to the Rain Group for using Man United's money. £30 million can get us a January signing. But they won't use their own money to do that as well. I do want to get into a bit of information. I do want to talk about Goncalo Ramos a bit. United have also been linked to Vinicius Jr., weirdly. Don't think we're going to get Vinicius Jr., which is why I've not really bothered covering that story. It's just a page seller, a page clicker story, whatever you call it. But I want to dive into a little bit of the story said by The Athletic, and then I do want to dive into the Goncalo Ramos news as well. And then I'll dive into the live chat as well. Blah, blah, blah. Maybe Qatar were not okay to earn 25% and investing like crazy for those rats to cash out. To be honest, I think Ratcliffe got mugged off. I think Ratcliffe's been mugged off by the Glazers. I'll say that now. Ratcliffe won because he was willing to massively overpay for United by 25%, let the Glazers control him for a few more years, use his money to do everything the Glazers need to do to United, so he'll be spending even more money, and then eventually buy out the Glazers when the club is good and on track because he makes the sporting changes needed to make, so then the Glazers will make more money. I think that Ratcliffe's been mugged off by the Glazers, and maybe Qatar were like, we ain't doing that. But this was obviously information that's come out today by The Athletic. So The Athletic have done a report about INEOS and INEOS's plans and intentions. Do go check out The Athletic. I think when you want insight on what goes on inside the club, I think Athletic are always quite good at the inside information. And they said INEOS want to fix the sporting side of things first. Sir Dave Brailsford was very focused at the meeting. He's trying to create an elite culture. Jean-Claude Blanc said less. He listened. He was friendly, social. So there was a meeting. And The Athletic is saying that Blanc was quite quiet and he was just listening. David Brailsford was quite loud and he wants to create this elite culture at United. We know that Brailsford is looking to have conversations with Fergie, is looking to have conversations with Gill about sort of plans at Manchester United and how to sort of embrace that elite culture back into the club, because we're just a culture of crybabies in the players now. A person present at the meeting with INEOS said that Ratcliffe is quite blunt. He was limited in what he could say, but we are here and we're going to stay here, is what he basically said to those. Another person who was present at the meeting said that they spent the last year researching Man United's history and worked and what we didn't. And so what someone else said, that INEOS made it clear they've researched Manchester United, what worked and what didn't in their history. It was then said by The Athletic that Brailsford was very impressive in his analysis. He spoke at length about the desire to learn from history and draw on unique elements of United's success from past eras as they move forward. It said INEOS want to not necessarily sign Galacticos and big names, but exciting and dynamic players. They want to combine this with strong leadership that has a vision, purpose from the managers and the captain. Everything that was said was very exciting. So it's coming out basically saying INEOS's plan isn't to be signing those big name Galacticos star players. INEOS's sort of strategy and plan is more that actually they want to sign sort of those good young players that you've sort of seen Liverpool do, who are in their early 20s and can be developed. You've seen Arsenal do. Rather than spending 100 million on players, you see Liverpool going for sort of more younger based players and developing them. Obviously, and Liverpool are top of the league. You see Arsenal, a lot of Arsenal's players like Odegaard, Gabriel, Saliba. It seems that INEOS don't want to go for those big name Galacticos. And I think that makes sense, because Sir Jim Ratcliffe, when he visited Man United in March, said to John Murta, why did you spend 70 million on a 30-year-old Casemiro? Why didn't you invest that in a player that mirrored Frankie de Jong, that was 23, 24, and could have potentially covered the role Ten Hag wants? And it was said that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS questioned why United are buying players over 30 on massive wages from Real Madrid, and that INEOS's new strategy is to buy players aged between about 20 and 26. At Manchester United as well. No new players over 27 wanted at United, and I think that's a good strategy to go by as well. If we want to develop players, we need to stick by the manager. High turnover kills player development. I agree 100%. I think you're right as well. And also, how about properly selling players to help our net spend? Paul even more, and City done brilliantly. 100%, that's something that needs to happen. I like that so far with the two players we have sold, Alvaro Fernandez and Mejbri, who haven't officially been sold yet, but there is buyback clauses and sellout clauses in there. Have they been gone for too cheap? Yes, but at least we've inserted some buyback and sellout clauses, sell-on clauses in those players. But I need to see the McTominays, the Antonys, the Lindelofs, the Maguires sold. I'm fed up with Manchester United selling their good players or their young players, but not selling the McTominays, the Maguires, the Lindelofs. Those kind of players need to be sold as well. It was also said, another person who met INEOS said that meeting INEOS was different from anything they'd ever heard from the Glazers. They said INEOS came across as their focus being football first, that INEOS' sort of decision-making was based on what will bring sporting success and not what will generate income. So those who've met INEOS in the meeting said that INEOS made it clear their plan is to bring sporting success to United, and they will focus on what will bring sporting success to United rather than what's going to bring in income. So that is sort of the main priority. I've always said this. Did I want the full sale? Yes. Was the full sale the most important thing for me? Yes. Do I want the Glazers out? Absolutely. But I said this, Liverpool and Arsenal don't have the best owners. Liverpool and Arsenal don't like their owners, but Liverpool and Arsenal employed a strategy, hired the right people, which focused on footballing success first. And Liverpool and Arsenal are where we want to be. Maybe not quite Arsenal, but we'd rather be Arsenal and Liverpool than Man United right now. And that kills me to say that. Whether you like Ratcliffe or not, whether you like the Glazers here or not, you can still have success as a football club if you have people who make the decisions that have the footballing interest at heart. If the people INEOS employ are the Dan Ashworths, the Paul Mitchells, and their focus and their priority is sporting success over commercial success, with the money Man United generate, that will be okay. We will be okay. We won't be Man City, we won't be Newcastle, but we'll be a bit more like Arsenal. We'll be a bit more like Liverpool. And the more and more success we have on the field, the more and more money we raise. So the commercial side, we generate more money. And Manchester United already generate loads of money when we're crap. Imagine how much money we generate when we're good. And the more money we generate, the more money we can spend on players, the more we can get better and better and better and better and better. And I actually think that the Glazers want this to happen. The Glazers want this. The Glazers want Ratcliffe to prioritise sporting success and make us good again, because the Glazers deep down know the better we are, the more money they'll make out of the club. So when they sell on their shares later on to Ratcliffe, they'll probably make more money. City usually break even at times or return a profit with recent years of net transfer spend. We need to get that 100%. City's figures are a little bit dodgy, but 100% as well. Exactly. People who made the most important decisions at United have not been fit for the job. 100%. We need to make sure that those making the important decisions want United to succeed. They're not thinking about what's going to make the most money in the bank, who's going to sell the most shirts. They're going to be thinking, all right, who's going to be best for the manager? Who's going to be best for the long-term vision? Who's going to be best for the long-term plan of United? That's what they need to talk about. We're going to talk about the Goncalo Ramos deal. And this is something that isn't like a concrete rumour, but it's very much Goncalo Ramos could be available. And I think if he is available, bish, bash, bosh on that, because this would be the perfect loan deal for me. So let's dive into this sort of Goncalo Ramos news and information that has come out and about in the recent sort of few hours. So basically, if you don't know, Goncalo Ramos went on loan to PSG with a buy option at the end, but he's not been that impressive at PSG. It was said that Goncalo Ramos could leave PSG at the end in the event of a high offer of just 6 months after joining for 65 million euros. Luis Enrique is not totally convinced by his level and does not consider him reliable for high level matches. Now, I think potentially there's an ability to maybe loan out Goncalo Ramos. There's sort of reports and suggestions that United are a big fan of this, and that with his desire to get game time and PSG's desire to get rid of him and raise his value, Manchester United could potentially see if they can do a loan deal for Goncalo Ramos. It's very up in the air. It'll be very difficult to do. It's Manchester United. It's too smart for United to do. But I do think there's a potential and reports of a potential about Goncalo Ramos becoming available on a 6-month loan. And if he is available on a 6-month loan, if I'm Manchester United, I get all over that, because we want a striker signing, but we want an actual good striker coming in. And while he hasn't been good this season at PSG, if you watch him at Benfica, if you watch him for Portugal, you know he's not a bad striker. You know he's better than Werner, Guirassy, Marlin, all the other players we've been linked to. Do I think we'll get him? No. Apparently we couldn't afford Werner. Apparently we can't afford Marlin. So I don't know how we're going to afford Ramos. But would it be a good signing? I think it would be. I think it would be a great second striker to have. but it is Manchester United. Anything good doesn't seem to happen as well. But I think PSG, he's realised he probably isn't worth the fee after having one good season. I think Benfica love to overprice their players. Yeah, I think Ramos is great, but not worth the fee. I really wanted Ramos in the summer, but I did think he was one of those Benfica overpriced players as well. INEOS plans to sell United players and carry out fracking at Old Trafford. I don't think that is the case. We've just dived into that as well. But I think that Goncalo Ramos would be a great signing, a great addition to Manchester United. I don't actually think that it will happen. It's too good to be true. I know he hasn't been brilliant this season, but it's smart, it's good, it's all of that stuff as well. There's obviously reports of Karim Benzema going to United, but we won't be able to afford his wages. We won't even be able to afford 2 weeks of his wages, let alone 6 months. Pellistri is very close to joining Granada on loan, is the report coming out and information coming out as well. And obviously, Alvaro Fernandez has been announced as a Benfica player. Manchester United's Maxi Odedele has joined Forest Green on loan to the end of the season. Joe Hugo's joined Burton Albion on loan and actually scored in his first game as well. Charlie McNeil has been recalled from loan, and Dan Gore is set to go out on loan as well. So lots of information coming out, of course, on the young players that could be leaving and joining United. Other information coming out is that Chelsea are keeping an eye on Luke Shaw. There was reports that Amad Diallo could be going to Middlesbrough in the January window, but that's been confirmed not to be true. Amad Diallo then posted a picture of him in a Sunderland kit and a heart. Amad Diallo is going nowhere in January. He's very much in Ten Hag's plans, as Pellistri's the one set to exit. And then according to reports in Spain, Man United are plotting a shock 130 million swoop for Vinicius Jr. But let's be honest, we are not getting Vinicius Jr. That's not going to happen. And then other reports and information have come out saying that Manchester United and Chelsea have both discussed Juventus striker Moise Kean as a short-term attacking option this month. Just like Man United, Chelsea are also looking to bring in a striker on a 6-month loan deal because Nicholas Jackson hasn't been the most convincing considering the mass amounts of chances that they are creating as well. But I don't know who United are going to sign, but do keep an eye on strikers being linked to United on loan. Sell players, not loans. It feels like the January window means sell players and only bring in players and loan to United. I feel like United don't realise you can buy someone in January. I think United think you can only do loans and you can only sell young players in January. You can't sell the Deadwood. You can't buy anyone new. January's for loans, January's for emergency crap players, and January's for selling our good young players to raise any money we can. That's the United motto for January. That's what it feels like. Dan Gore could definitely go out on loan, and yeah, I heard about Amad Diallo. I think both Gore and Diallo have bright futures at United. They're two of the most exciting young talents, 100% as well. We can't sell actual first-team squad players in January. We would have to buy players. I have no doubt there'll be a clean out in the summer. I agree. I mean, we should, if we were smart, we'd sell those players that aren't good enough and buy new players. But I don't think INEOS want to do that because that'll be John Murtough and Ten Hag choosing who we bring in. And considering who we've recently brought in and the signings, I think INEOS are like, you know what, as much as they'd love to sell a few players and buy people in January, they're probably thinking, let's wait till we've got Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell, whoever it is that we want to appoint, whoever it is that we want to bring in, and then have a massive clear out and then bring in the players that we need to bring in. I think this summer could be massive because I think because of INEOS's investment, we can spend an extra 90 million before FFP hurts us. I think this could be a big summer for outs and ins. However, saying that, because we overpay our average players, it's so much more difficult to sell. And hopefully we do get the players out and in that need to go. Apparently, we're trying to sell Martial, but he's refusing to leave because he's on 250k a week at United and wants to see out his contract. And I think that's the big problem Man United will have is a lot of the players that will try and force out, a lot of the players that will want to leave the club because they're on ridiculous money, 250k a week, like Martial, that Ten Hag is essentially forcing out because Ten Hag literally said in a press conference, Martial's not been at levels. That's why he's not playing, calling out Martial in a press conference. Players that Man United want to get rid of, like Anthony Martial, I think we can't sell because of his wages. And I think INEOS will plan a big clear out, but it'll be interesting to see how successful they are at it because a lot of players that we want to get rid of and that aren't in Ten Hag's plans and aren't in the future Man United plans. Even Anthony's on 200 grand a week. He's not going to get that anywhere else. It'll be interesting to see because Anthony's one of the players reported that we want to sell. McTominay and Lindelof are on lower wages, so they'll be easier to sell. Wan-Bissaka's wages aren't too high. They'll be easier to sell. But Maguire's on high wages. Anthony's on high wages. Ericsson's on high wages. 3 players that we want to sell. It might be difficult. And Casemiro and Varane are on high wages, but we're trying to get those lower as well. So it will be difficult for us to get a lot of players out. I want to keep Casemiro and Varane for one more season because I think that it frustrates me. I get that they're old on high wages, but Casemiro and Varane will do a better job than McTominay and Lindelof next season playing for Manchester United. So I actually did a tier list of who I would sort of buy and sell at Manchester United. Actually, I'll show you this quickly here. Let me scroll down to my sort of tier list of information of players that I'd buy and sell. High wages FC. We are high wages FC. 100%. The worrying is doing absolutely nothing this window could set us back even further, have some damage control. I agree that we should do something this window. I get that we haven't got the structure in place and INEOS haven't got the structure in place that they want, which might be why they don't want to do anything and that the takeover isn't ratified. But I think ignoring the January window sets us back so much as well. Maybe we should have tried to sell him before. He had 6 months left on his deal. I agree. Can't believe there was a Ballon d'Or bonus on Martial's contract. Madness as well. Keep smashing the likes for Alice. Big up Daniel in the chat. Serious questions need to be asked about Shaw's fitness. Pulled out of the Spurs match last minute. A replacement left back might be needed sooner. I agree. I do feel sorry for Shaw because he was out for like 2 months and then he played every single minute. 3 games in 6 days because Ten Hag didn't manage his minutes. I think if Ten Hag had managed Luke Shaw's minutes a bit better when he came back, he wouldn't be as injured as he was. I don't think he'd be out injured again. I actually do think, like how Martin has had a serious injury and then came back and then had a serious injury, I think with Luke Shaw it's the same. I think we'd not managed their minutes well. I think we'd rushed them back, to be honest with you. But I do quite partly agree. I think with Luke Shaw's leg break, I think he's bound to have problems and that's what caused some problems last time. So I did a Man United clear-out list. This summer, I'd sell Evans, Lindelof, Sancho, McTominay, Anthony, Martial, Williams, Eriksen, and Donny. The following players I would sell if a good offer came in: Maguire, Casemiro, Varane, and one of Wan-Bissaka and Dalot. But I think that Maguire, Casemiro, Varane, and one of Wan-Bissaka and Dalot are good enough to be involved in the squad next season because Maguire is better than Lindelof, and 2 centre-backs have got to go. And for me, that's Evans and Lindelof. They're the 2 centre-backs that go. And then the players I've said that need to start performing, if not move them on. So they have to start performing next season because we've not seen enough of them at United. Is Rashford, obviously, because he's been poor again this season. Mason Mount, Onana, and Malacia, but we'll judge them in a year's time of how they're performing this season. And then the players I keep is Højlund, Martinez, Maino, Garnacho, Bruno. I said Shaw, depending on injuries, and Amad Diallo is the players that I would keep. But Amad Diallo is a big question mark and a star next to keeping him because actually I just want to see him have a run of games in sort of in terms of Man United players as well. Shaw had a good run without many injuries for a while, but he's not getting any younger. This is why we could have kept Alvaro Fernandez. No, sell him. We don't need a left back. Shaw, Malacia, Dalot can play there. Also Fernandez, well, we just sold Fernandez. We're probably selling him because there's a 6 million buy clause on his loan, which is ridiculous. But at least we've got a buyback clause as well. It's funny how we used to not have to worry about players having a word in in transfers and forcing them out the door. Now we have to treat them like humans and not money-grabbing parasites. I don't know what you mean by that. It's funny how we used to not have to worry about. Oh, yeah. I feel like a lot of our players come in now for the money rather than because they want to be at United. I feel like that's what you mean. I think I misread that as well. Everything in Manchester United and the takeover is all United fans' fault because they did nothing but fund the Glazers. I don't think you can blame United fans for the Glazers being greedy. The Glazers are greedy because the Glazers are greedy as well. But yeah, listen, people. David said I'd give Anthony a loan. To be honest, at this rate, yeah. But listen, people, I'm going to wrap up the live stream here. Please do hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe down below if you're new. Thank you for watching today's live stream. Big up everybody in the chat. See you next time. Bye.